Hello there, one and all, and thank you very much for tuning in to episode 571 of Love at First Scent with me, Persolaise, live on YouTube as always. What I keep forgetting to say on these videos is that if you haven't already subscribed to this channel, please do consider doing so. Click on the little bell so that you get notifications about new videos, and you should also, if you would like to support my work, be able to find links to my Ko-fi page and my Substack in the video description below. I'm forgetting all of the things I need to say because this is the third of fourth planned videos for today, and for this one we need to kind of slow down a tiny little bit because I'm planning to get through 5 perfumes at a pace, because I don't want to take up tons of your time. Alex, who is now calling herself Alex, says, hello everyone, thanks for tuning in. Almost to 1,000 Love at First Scents. Well... yeah, let's get to 600 first. No, hang on. What are we on? I can't even remember. What was this? What did I just say? 571. It's the heat from the lights turning my brain to mush. Yay, says Oriana. Okay, this is a brand. I suspect you know a thing or two about this brand. It's Rubini, and an Italian brand set up by somebody called Andrea Rubini. This should be interesting, says Johnny. Why? Tell me what you think of them. All of the perfumes from the Rubini range have so far been made by Cristiano Canali, and actually here are my pre-sprayed Rubini blotters, so I need to pop those on there, and also some pre-written thoughts in the notebook, just when you thought I don't take this sort of stuff seriously. The name of the brand is one that obviously I've heard a few times, and several people said to me, oh, you ought to check them out, and you know how it is. You mean to check them out and then you don't, and stuff happens. But I got a sample set from Saint-Celier, the UK-based retailer, actually when I ordered samples for another brand. Perhaps we'll talk about the other brand another time. But I thought, let me check these out. And I'm glad I did. Sometimes it's really great actually smelling the entirety of a brand's output. When they have 5 perfumes in a discovery set, that's doable. You know, you can do that of an evening. And just sort of almost like charting the development from beginning to end, and also going into it a little bit cold, not knowing very... I mean, I knew nothing about, and I still don't know very much about Andrea Rubini. Don't know very much about Cristiano Canali's work. I think, is there some sort of a connection with an enterprise, a family enterprise that was around many decades ago, and has Andrea Rubini revived the name? I mean, I don't know. I could be talking complete rubbish. And in a way, I suppose, so this is the kind of, this is the total antithesis of all of the preamble and the context I gave you in a previous video. This is a sort of completely non-contextual thing. Never heard of it, says Alex, but very interested. Matthew says, this is a house I've been meaning to try, although I feel they're quite hard to get. Are they worth buying a sample set? Sample set, 100%. Because these are conceptually very interesting. And I think my main feeling, and perhaps I'll share my main feeling now before we actually smell them individually. But you know, a lot of the time when you have independent brands, some people would say niche brands. I personally find that term quite useless nowadays. But when you have independent brands, one way that they think that they need to kind of stand out and raise their head above the parapet and get people's attention is by making stuff that is just all out weird, to the point that it's kind of virtually unwearable. Now, I know that if you look long enough and hard enough, you will probably find a wearer for just about everything. And I know that there are odd brands out there that have a following. I mean, you know, let's actually think of a brand that by most measures nowadays is quite mainstream. Etalib d'Orange continue to make Sécrétion Magnifique because it sells and a lot of people like wearing it. Some people find it really bizarre. But some brands try to be independent, try to be niche, by just playing the weird card a bit too much, and then you kind of think, well, actually, it isn't hard making a strange perfume. Most perfumers will tell you that it really isn't difficult to come up with something bizarre, odd. The trick is to try to come up with something that is original, that stays on the right side of bizarre and odd, that is striking and surprising, but is accessible enough for people to actually want to wear and place on their skin. And I think these ones, when taken as a whole, I think some are more successful than others, but when taken as a whole, they really, really go for a bit of a kind of white knuckle ride in terms of pushing the weirdness boundary, the weirdness envelope. But I think they pretty much stay on the right side of strange, bizarre, and they're all really interesting and fascinating and wearable to varying degrees. But I found myself thinking, I smelt them after smelling the wares of a brand which I will not name, and that is also an independent brand, but that brand is trying to do the thing that some other independent brands do, which is that it was just trying to be super safe and rather bland and rather boring and rather predictable. And I felt quite disappointed. This came along and I thought, oh gosh, it is still possible to do something different, and presumably it's possible to make a living out of it. I mean, I don't know what else Andrea Rubini does, but I guess part of whatever it is that he makes his money from includes selling these perfumes. Beautiful is the challenge, says Alex, not being weird and unwearable. Agreed. I mean, beauty is in the nose of the beholder, right? But I think originality is a challenge as well, or at least trying to bring something different to the table. You know, maybe not complete originality. There's nothing new under the sun, etc., etc. I think Beaufort is a weird brand, says Gavin. Well, interesting you say that, because that is exactly the brand that I was thinking of. But they have a following. They have a very, very loyal following. I don't get their stuff. 4160 Tuesdays. I don't particularly get the style from the perfumes that I've worn, but you know, last time I looked, they're at I think they were stocked at Fortnum and Mason. So you know, there is a market for most things. Oriana says Saint-Celier in the UK and Perfumery Barcelona in the EU have Rubini and Do samples. Thank you very much for that. Let's go in kind of reverse order, because the bit something that's a bit of a shame is that the most recent release, well, I say the most recent release, this is the 2024 release. Apparently there is a 2025 release, but I don't think it's on the Saint-Celier website, and as far as I can see, it's not even on the Rubini website, so maybe it's coming. So I don't know what that one is, but the most recent release is the one that I actually found the most disappointing, and I thought, oh dear, is this the direction of travel? It's called Hyperion. Pre-labeled, because I mustn't do it on the pre-sprayed blotter. They've got very, very detailed stories that go with the scents. I can take or leave stories. Anyway, so this is Hyperion. And it certainly starts well. What did I say about it here? Oh yes, I mean, you get these really, really quite compelling magnetic clashes of notes. So this is what I was writing as I was smelling this. I've written glue, cherries, liqueur, petals and almonds and grapes and tannins, and I've written quite abstract. But it's fascinating. You know, there's a kind of incense note as well. It's quite... No, sorry, I'm reading the wrong one. Yeah, I was thinking, am I really still smelling the same thing? Right, this is strong incense note, and the idea is that it's meant to be. Is there a very, very famous sci-fi novel called Hyperion? I seem to remember not enjoying it, but it's very, very highly regarded. And isn't it about going to lots of other dimensions? It's a very, very, very kind of peppery incense. I'm so glad I actually did, because I actually thought I was going mad. I was reading that list of notes out thinking, has something happened, because I'm not smelling this stuff under my nose today. That one was fundamental. Fundamental is the weird one. Anyway, back on track. Right, so what I've written for this one is that you get this peppery olibanum frankincense. You get an ylang ylang, which kind of adds a touch of fleshiness, something a bit sort of it's just a little bit carnal, but you also get a kind of weird synthetic burnt plastic patchouli thing, which maybe is meant to be the rocket fuel. But it holds together, and I think this is what I found remarkable about the range as a whole, is that I'd be going, oh my goodness, it's doing this, and it's doing that, and it's doing this, that, and the other. But it somehow coheres and doesn't collapse into a mess. Hyperion is by Dan Simmons. Yeah, I remember having that book recommended to me by loads and loads of people and kind of not being able to finish it, but that's okay. This one is about pepper and yuzu, says Spaced Out. Thank you very much. My problem with it is that in its dry down stage, so here's pre-sprayed Hyperion, yeah, it does the woody ambery thing quite strongly. Now, hats off to Cristiano Canali. The woody ambers are quite cunningly disguised at the start. I did not see them coming. The perfume in the beginning doesn't make me do that, ooh, you know, crinkled forehead type, keep this stuff away from me. It's only in the very, very, very kind of final depths of the base. Gavin says, Hyperion the novel sounds fascinating. A Canterbury Tales structured sci-fi novel. Yes, a lot of people love it. I couldn't get on with it. It becomes a bit simpler. I mean, I suppose you could say that nothing could live up to the weirdness of the start, but it's compelling. It is interesting for sure. Right, let me get rid of the pre-sprayed one, otherwise I won't know where we are. Next, I'd like to do one which I also found, get to the right page, perhaps a bit more predictable, and a bit more disappointing because of that, because I thought, okay, well, it's kind of doing what I thought it would do based on its story, but it does it very well. It's called Nuvolari, which apparently is the surname of a famous race car driver. I don't know whether it was like Formula One. I don't know. I don't know very much about that world. I don't expect I'm going to learn much about that world because I'm not planning to watch you know which movie. But this is a kind of leather, plastic, petrol, fumes, fuel type composition. And for what it is, it is good. It is very, very good. Yeah, I mean, it does do it extremely well because you get this burst of like petrol, definitely not diesel, and the kind of new car smell. And I think it's a kind of something green and something incensey that's supporting that. And it feels like it's got a lot of velocity to it, a lot of speed. Do you remember when Pierre Guillaume years ago did, for one of his ranges, he did a really, really fantastic scent called Metal Hurlant, I think, which was howling metal, apparently inspired by the name of a comic or a graphic novel. That kind of took things more into a leathery direction, but this feels very, very convincingly metallic, silvery, gleaming. But I suppose maybe what I wanted was just something to surprise me, and I guess nothing did. What did I write about it? Plastic leather, car seats, very, very oh yes, and something about it that's very Comme des Garçons in its weirdness. You know, when Comme des Garçons really decided to go weird, like it could have been in their synthetic series, and that's it. I put down Ballard and Cronenberg. I mean, it was David Cronenberg who did the adaptation of J.G. Ballard's Crash, didn't he? But this isn't as dangerous as Crash, and it's not as strange as Crash, and it's nowhere near as disturbing as Crash, and actually maybe it needed to be. Maybe it could have done with just a bit more danger. It seems like a good example for a storytelling perfume. Yes, absolutely. The whole range is pre-sprayed, Nuvolari. Yeah, a fairly basic kind of plasticky, leathery sort of dry down. I would like to know, says Wagstaff, of a fragrance as disturbing as Crash. Well, there's a challenge. I mean, somebody out there probably has done it. But that was a disturbing book and a disturbing film. Okay, the next three are the ones that I really do give a thumbs up to, a sort of unreserved thumbs up. Hang on, this is going to get confusing. Pop those there. I wonder what order we should go in. Let's do from 2023. Nuvolari, by the way, was from 2021. From 2023, there's one called Odenaturae, so like an ode to nature, or however we take that. Is this the one? No. Where's it gone? Here we are. Again by Cristiano Canali. This is, from the name, you might predict, and you would be right, that it's kind of green and it's meant to be sort of super natural, as in uber natural, uber naturalistic, but it's also fantastically odd and strange and quirky, and I really, really can't wait to take it out for a test drive. It's the note that hits you first off is chamomile, but this is no wishy-washy chamomile. You know how chamomile can actually, for example, if chamomile tea, some people love chamomile tea. I enjoy it at times, but I also find it quite hard to take because there's something about its smell that is so super herbal and super dry and super woody and parched that I do find it difficult to take. And I never, ever, ever sweeten my tea or my coffee. But if I'm having a chamomile tea, I really cannot take it without either, you know, a bit of sugar or a drop of honey or something like that. It's and the strangeness of chamomile comes out here, and it's almost, chamomile can be a real stinker, says Alex. It reminds me of civet. It can, and it's almost as though rather than going down the cliched path of saying, oh, you know, if this is going to be a green scent, let's do freshly cut grass and let's do leaves and let's do woods. It's almost like they've gone for the most challenging natural smells. You know, a few years ago when Marc-Antoine Corticchiato did Maleme for his own brand, for Parfum d'Empire, and that was meant to be the smell of weeds or a particular type of weed. This is that, you know, to the power of 3. It takes that let's celebrate weeds and let's celebrate the less frequently celebrated members of the natural world idea to its limit, and it's fascinating. I've written a willfully odd opening, chamomile and tomato. That's right, it's got this kind of strange tomato leaf thing. Immortelle pops in, that kind of herbal aspect of Angelica pops in. I've written down here that it's like a threatening idyll. So you know how in some sort of sci-fi films, there's a lot of kind of sci-fi feel to this, maybe because they feel futuristic somehow. They feel like the perfumes of tomorrow to some extent. In a lot of sci-fi films, perfection is threatening. The idyllic is dangerous. And I think this is what you get. You know, like how the sea, for instance, you know, you look out at the sea, and even on a still, you know, if it's a still day, it looks so beautiful and the sun is shining off it, but you know that if you're actually plunged into it, you'd barely be able to survive, you know, more than a couple of minutes. This is nature as a threat, as something lethal, and it's beautifully done. It's very kind of chlorophyll-like, and the base is very, very kind of convincingly mossy and still quite bizarre. Yeah, they're fascinating. They're really, really fascinating. This sounds nice, says My Pipe Camp. You need to get the sample set. Then we get to the one that I started reading out first, Fundamental, which was their original one, but apparently they reworked it in 2023. So it first came out in 2015, I believe. And then this version is from 2023. Where's my blotter? Is this Fundamental? Yes. Okay. And this is also got a very, very bizarre opening. Oh, a trifidocorde, says Waxed. Yeah, it could be a trifidocorde. Yes, okay, thank you. Now my brain doesn't feel like it's melting, because I am getting glue and cherries and liqueur and petals and almonds and grapes. That's it, because this is meant to be the kind of tannin quality of a certain variety of grapes. It makes you think of wine. It makes you think of peaty, yeasty materials. I guess in that sense, it's another kind of homage to nature, but not just nature. This is like a homage to bacterial culture, and maybe that's why it's called Fundamental. And I thought these ideas work because it is. I've written here, it's the power of the earth come to life. Oh yes, and I drew a comparison with Mama Juju from the brand Vireo. interesting brand. Mama Juju, great piece of work by Maeve McCurtain. Mama Juju is like a kind of broad-hipped, uncompromising Mother Earth emerging from the depths of some volcano, you know, with a kind of lava pouring off her skin and not affecting her in the least bit. This is nature as a completely unhuman, non-human, you know, non-anthropomorphized being. And maybe it's like a kind of nature monster, or I've actually written the words yeast monster, or a kind of bacteria monster come to base, that come to life. It's, you know, you're kind of picturing really, really bad 1970s Doctor Who special effects, the kind of thing I suppose I mean from look up some stills from the John Pertwee Doctor Who story called The Green Death, where I think some of the baddies were made from bubble wrap that I think had been painted green. I'm pretty sure that's The Green Death. A sourdough strangler, says Oriana. Yeast monster, a woman's dream, says Mitra Kai. Okay, I'm wondering whether there's a bit of sarcasm there. It's bizarre, but you know, I don't. Even though it's strange, I don't smell them and think, oh God, nobody's ever going to wear this in a million years. I think, oh, actually, I want to try this. And this is what I mean about the fact that they don't just descend into nonsense. And pre-sprayed fundamental. Yeah, it's kind of green, peaty, yeasty, bready, very, very gently bready. And we finish with my favourite, which is called Tambour Sacre, or the Sacred Drum. This one was a kind of bit of an obvious instant love for me. This one is from 2018, but it does what it does so well. This is a kind of three-way tussle of ingredients, and it's just ingenious how it works. There are three main points on this axis here, and each one tries to dominate, and they are pepper and coffee. Quite an amazing coffee note, one of the most long-lasting coffee notes I've ever smelt in a perfume, and resins, I think chiefly in the form of myrrh. I can't remember now, but apparently it's got a kind of high quality of myrrh in it. I think this is one of their best sellers, says Oriana. I'm not surprised, because this is more accessible, even though it's very, very interesting. And you kind of think the pepper's going to win, and then the coffee comes in, and the coffee just lasts forever on skin. And I think the idea is meant to be about, you know, a sacred drum, like an ancient primal drum, beating a rhythm that the whole of life follows. It's meant to be inspired supposedly by Ethiopia. What's interesting as well is that it actually opens really, really bright, and for just a minute or so you wonder if it's going to go down a kind of peppery cologne territory, because it's got a really, really luminous, illuminating, citrusy cologne-like opening. But no, then the coffee gets in there and things start becoming darker and heavier. And I started writing here because I think this was the second one of theirs that I smelled. I wrote, threatens to collapse into a mess, but it never does. I really liked it. And this was one of the ones where I thought, ooh, how much are there? Am I tempted? I think they're all extraits de parfum. And how's this one doing in pre-sprayed form? Yeah, I still get the coffee. I mean, even though I've gone straight from smelling this just sprayed blotter, it's really interesting. A very, very woody, earthy, resinous, peppery coffee. Alex says this must be wonderful in hot, humid weather. Coffee is a heavenly note. I agree. So there we are. I'm very, very happy to have made the acquaintance of this brand. I can't wait to try their new one. Is it called Idilio or something like that? And I think it takes the name from something to do with idols and ideals. The obscure notes of roasted coffee hammer over a candid pentagram of tuberoses, says Gavin. Is that from their website or something? A pentagram of tuberoses. Let me smell that again. I suppose there could be a kind of very fresh tuberose in there, but I don't know. Anyway, as if you haven't had enough, we will be back in a few minutes with a very, very quick review of 2 perfumes, one new, one a reissue from an extremely well-known brand. But for now, thank you very much for watching. See you in a bit. Bye now.